Welcome to NFL Daily, where your epic sunset is just our Wednesday. I'm Gregg Rosenthal here in the Chris Wesseling podcast studio. Beside just a lot of men, just a lot of beef here. We have Steve Wyche, the legend, been all around the country. Patrick Claybon, and to my right, Nick Shook in studio.
Hooray.
For the first time all season.
And for everybody who watches on YouTube who's tired of my face being too big in proportion to everybody in here, now we're all in the same area.
Now you can see Nick next to me, which is also too big.
Real quick, you know what's great though? You can tell who lives in Ohio.
Yeah.
He's got on like a T-shirt.
Yeah.
Right.
And we're all like, man, it's like 50
We're all in
degrees
sweaters.
LA and it's cold.
And I opened the show talking about the Rose Bowl because I saw this headline this morning, and it says, college football fans obsessed with epic sunset at Rose Bowl, and they should be. Everyone is always like, this is the most beautiful sunset. This is the most. They should have the national championship every week. We have Nick Shook out here supporting his Ohio State Buckeyes, although I thought he was a Kent State guy, but
Kent State grad, but you grew up in Ohio. You're an Ohio State fan.
Ohio. So he comes out and he sees a great game, and it is great watching that. And I'm watching Kirk Herbstreit, and he's enjoying that sunset more than I believe he's enjoyed any NFL action that he's called over the last couple of seasons. And,
there's a Pavlovian effect for that.
And it is true. It is like amazing. And yet I was thinking like, well, that's just Wednesday in Pasadena.
Right.
That's literally every day. And it made me appreciate just that we're lucky to just live out here. That's just like that is just kind of every day.
You know, my wife is Jamaican. She says the same thing about all the tourists who come and visit in Jamaica for a week. It's a great place in the year. Well, it's just Tuesday for them.
Right, exactly. And I've been appreciating. There
we go.
They have kind of cranked up. I feel like the sunsets over the last 2 weeks have been especially.
Aren't you romantic?
Lovely.
Well, yeah, the winter solstice was on the 21st.
Okay.
So we're getting them earlier.
Here we go. Now we get the science.
And we're all out and able to appreciate it. And yeah, like during this time last year, when none of us really knew what the future was, I started to like drive around LA, like we take the kids to the beach, and it's like, wow, like this is great. I'm going to appreciate this because I don't know how long it's going to be here.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, everyone is a blessing.
My family has been gone, so I've had the time to go running at the beach a little bit more and appreciate it. And it's all like people from outside the country that are visiting here, and so it does make you appreciate. One thing they don't tell you about your family leaving you for the holidays, everyone kind of feels bad for it. It feels a little bit like a vacation.
Careful.
I have to admit.
Careful.
No.
Careful.
Just
they don't listen, right?
It's sad, but it's also a little bit like a vacation. All right, we are not on vacation today. No, she knows that we talk about it.
Alone time's important.
Sure.
She's jealous. Our Week 18 preview. It's a weird week.
Yeah.
And we're going to go through the games. And I decided let's go through it in chronological order this week because that's sort of how our week is going to be framed. So, yes, the best game of the weekend is undoubtedly Vikings and Lions, but we're going to save that for last.
Yeah, and take note, if you're one of those horrible billionaires that have decided that social media timelines should not be in chronological order, they absolutely should be. We're doing this show for all of you who are scrolling trying to find relevant information. We start with a division matchup in the AFC North, the Cleveland Browns at the Baltimore Ravens. The line is 18 points in favor of Baltimore, Steve. The over-under 41.5. It's an ESPN game. Chris Fowler, Louis Riddick, Dan Orlovsky, and Laura Rutledge on the call. Baltimore does need this win to keep pace. If the Steelers, who will have a chance to watch on Sunday, do the Steelers ultimately end up having nothing to worry about, no reason to play?
No. Well, yeah, I mean, they'll be the 5th seed, if that's the case. But look, that number is so significant. I mean, what a slap in the face to Bailey Zappi and Dorian Thompson.
We don't know if there's gonna be the Zap Daddy out there on Saturday, but
Zap Daddy.
Kevin Stefanski didn't rule out that your Browns would play both guys.
Yeah, why not?
It seemed like
Why not? I mean,
because you have another quarterback that's better than both of them on
and
your roster.
they're actively not trying to win football games. It seems. So
this is true tanking. It rarely happens, but this is true tanking.
Yeah, I mean, we've already seen 2 games of Dorian Thompson-Robinson. We haven't seen much. I would love to see more because he has physical tools, but seems a little overwhelmed by the speed of the game. The offensive line has been great. The running game does not exist, and he's not in sync with his receivers. So what happens? You score 3 points in a game that was actually pretty winnable against the Dolphins, ends up not being winnable.
Did they cover 18 against the Dolphins? Claybon is a Ravens, honk over here.
Wow.
And no, he's just a
Coming out the gate hot.
It's a new usage of the word honk. It doesn't even make sense, but you were saying how 18 points is too much. It's crazy. It's a division game. You're worried about it. And yet Tyler Huntley almost covered 18 last week. It was 20-3 when the Dolphins played them.
Yeah, and the Browns turned the ball over in the red zone. They had opportunities there,
Yep.
and that's Miami. It's different, and Baltimore's defense has been playing better, but it just feels like a touchy game where you want to get the win against a division opponent, get 22-8 out of there, and have them not have to deal with it in the second half. And
Right.
it's just always one of those weird spoiler situations, especially in the division in the last week of the season.
The Ravens are going to mop the floor with them.
Yes.
I mean, and look, I don't like this cover, but they very well could. I was at their game on Christmas when they just destroyed the Texans, and talking to John Harbaugh and Dean Pease and some of these guys, they love what's going on defensively. Namely, and Dean was telling me the fact when they moved Kyle Hamilton back, because they're saying what's the biggest issue all season long was the deep balls over the head. They put Kyle Hamilton, their best defender, back there. Those are stopped. Moving Marlon Humphrey into the nickel has been great. They're just trying to fine tune things defensively because they know offensively they're good. The first half, I think the starters play the whole way. They put the screws down on Cleveland. They start resting guys.
I like seeing Marlon Humphrey make the Pro Bowl. He's had a really good season.
Yes.
Their secondary's been better since they have Ardarius Washington's made some big
How good has
plays
he
for
been?
them. Yep.
Yeah.
I'd love to see them sit Derrick Henry a little bit, like you mentioned. Justice Hill, though, has not been practicing despite John Harbaugh saying he expected him back this week. I'm now not expecting him back because he hasn't practiced.
Honestly, I don't think you even have to worry about Derrick Henry. They're still going to dominate them. And I think it's really just because of where they've been as an offense since they lost to Philadelphia. They go into the bye, the whole Deontay Johnson didn't want to play thing. You move past all of that. And yeah, you played the Giants, but you dominate 35 points in that win. 34 points against the Steelers in a really strong finish. And that was the first time where I went, oh, they're peaking. They are peaking at the perfect time, and the Browns are not going to stand a chance in this game. It's going to be an easy win.
I know we want to go at a faster pace today with some of these games, but actually there's a lot of interesting things in this game. I do want to just mention with the Browns what's been going on with the Deshaun Watson contract that they signed. I don't think that guarantees him that he necessarily is starting next year or even has much of a chance to start. I think that got twisted a little bit. Just kind of wanted to throw that out there. And then thought the Myles Garrett comments over the last week or two that he wanted to see the plan that the Browns had before he decided what his path was interesting. We hadn't mentioned that on the show. That's a first. And then I literally haven't seen you, so I just want to ask, like, how was the Beyonce thing in person? Were you able to watch or what?
No, I was on the field.
See her? Like, what's going on?
Oh yeah, no, I was on the field because I had to get to the tunnel to interview John Harbaugh. Our D'Amico Ryan's coming out, so I'm right there. Like I'm 15 feet from Post Malone. First off, he's a lot taller than I thought. He's about 6'2", 6'3".
Low Post Malone.
Low Post Malone. That's right. But it was unreal. Like I couldn't tell you like a name of a song on her new album, but man, that performance was ridiculous.
Super Bowl level.
It was probably better than any Super Bowl. It's the same people who produce it, Jesse Collins Entertainment, but it was incredible.
I mean, Justice for Cowboy Carter. I love that album.
Yeah,
I knew all the songs. Our producer, Jason's like, let's move, please. No, we'll spend as much time on this as we want. But no, that's it.
Yeah, so good that Lauren and I were convinced that Dolly Parton was going to show up.
Oh, that would
to do her part in the song. Let's stay in that division in the AFC North. Greg, the Cincinnati Bengals with an opportunity to complete the improbable comeback that you first told me about on our preview show several weeks ago, that they still had hope. They are favored by 2 points at the Pittsburgh Steelers, who may have no reason to try. Joe, Troy, and Lisa on the call coming up on Saturday. How do you see this one going?
I think the Steelers can and will win this game if I have to pick. It's a coin flip. They're going to play all out, according to Mike Tomlin. They don't care about that the division could be clinched earlier in the day. I believe him because they've just been losing. They've been a bad team. I think they want to prove to themselves that they're not a bad team. They lost the last 3 games by the combined score of 90-40. Cool. They haven't deserved any rest. Their defense has not played well, starting with this first Bengals matchup, which you remember was back and forth. So I think the motivation will be there. They'll be at home. And they also know, and I think this is part of it, that the 5 seed is not the same as the 6 seed.
Spot.
You can go to Houston and win a playoff game versus potentially going back to Baltimore, which I don't think they'd be afraid of, but that's a big difference. And so I think we're going to see a different Steelers team. I don't know if they win or not. It's a coin flip, but I think we're going to see them play all out.
Yeah, you want to talk about like motivation? There will be no more motivation in an NFL game this weekend outside of Sunday night than this game right here.
Yep.
And it's because the Bengals have to win to try to preserve their hopes to get in the playoffs, of course. But it's also because the Steelers and Mike Tomlin have a point to prove. They have not looked like the same football team over the last 3 weeks. You could speak about the offensive struggles. You could point at Russell Wilson, but it's been a total team failure. Defensively, they haven't held up well either. That's usually their strength. And if anybody wants to get right back on track before the playoffs and prove his point, it's Mike Tomlin. The standard is the standard.
There you go.
And regardless of what happens before, they're going to try to play it all out. I'm very excited to see this one.
First off, George Pickens is supposed to be back.
Yes.
And you know, and Greg, we've talked about him out of the lineup. This offense is not the same. Right now, he killed the Bengals earlier this year. I was at that game. What was the score there? 44-38. But it was just the Bengals offense just went up and down the field on them regardless. They just couldn't stop the Steelers.
They just got some turnovers, basically.
Yeah.
Right. The turnovers and the 10-yard dump-offs to Najee Harris across the middle of the field. That probably will happen again. The Bengals will take it. I'm taking the Bengals in this game. They are too red hot. All of their receivers, the fact that T. Higgins has all of a sudden leapt right to the front of the buffet line is a problem now. And I really like the possibility of the Bengals getting the number 7 seed, having to go to Buffalo week 1. Wow. You think the Bills want to see them?
No.
No. I mean, so we know, granted, the Broncos, some other teams have some things to say about this. Cincinnati's playing good football right now. I like them in this game at Pittsburgh.
I like looking back, and I know it was earlier this season. It was week 10. Russell Wilson played arguably the best game we've seen since
It was the best game.
maximum Russ cooking in Seattle. The 29-38 for 414 yards. The one interception was possibly a defensive pass interference that wasn't called on George Pickens. They come back out and score that next drive. The Bengals could do nothing. Could do absolutely nothing to stop them, and I can't get that out of my mind with the potential for the Steelers to play with the stakes that you guys mentioned. Where why not go ahead and eliminate the Bengals? We're talking about how nobody wants to play the Bengals. Why not just go ahead and get rid of the Bengals right now if you're the
Yeah,
Steelers?
like
I think they have a great opportunity.
Two things can be true. No one wants to play the Bengals, and I still think what's happened over the first 14, 15 weeks of the season matters. And I think the Steelers team was a little better than these 9-8 types of Steelers teams.
I agree.
But if they lose this game, maybe they're not. And the Bengals team, I do think there is like a loser gene in there that they're finding ways to lose. And they let
back to the Broncos.
they left the door open last week for the Broncos to take it. It didn't quite happen for them, but I do think there's something in these two teams this season's in their bones that the Bengals find a way to lose this game.
And let's not forget this too. Russ, who doesn't turn the ball over, turns over 4 times the past 2 games. So I mean, that's probably more the anomaly than a trend.
Mike Tomlin though was careful because on the broadcast they tried to blame one of the interceptions on Russell Wilson's receiver at the end of the game, the one in the end zone rather last week. And Tomlin went out this week and said, "Nope, that wasn't the receiver's fault.
There you go.
He didn't do anything.
Justin Fields time.
That was just Russell. So I like it. Holding his feet to the fire.
Justin Fields going to get 10 snaps.
And more than running packages, maybe. Who knows?
We'll leave the Steelers and their opportunity against the Cincinnati Bengals, who also have one, and go to the NFC to wrap up Saturday night. It is New Orleans at Tampa Bay, where the Buccaneers are favored by 13.5 points. Kevin Burkhardt, Tom Brady, Aaron Andrews, and Tom Rinaldi on the call. The Saints have struggled in the past few weeks. Can Rizzy ball in the hopes of a division rival? No,
it's not going to happen. The way that the Saints have played football over the last couple of weeks has just been increasingly more and more disheartening. You can talk about the agenda and Spencer Rattler and the first half where he has successes and the second half where he doesn't. But as a team overall, they're just not playing football cohesively. It's not just the defense. It's not just the offense. It's the entire group. And against a Buccaneers team that is absolutely white hot. I mean, Baker Mayfield going off last week with 5 touchdown passes against the Panthers. This is one of the better offenses, one of the best offenses in the NFL when everything is hitting. And I think against a team like the Saints, who are 1 week away from the offseason, it's going to be pretty easy. Now, we are in the NFL where weird things happen, and it is a divisional game. And Patrick, you spoke about that earlier with the Ravens and the Browns. But much like that game, I don't expect this to be much of a contest.
Yeah, first out, shout out to everybody in the 504. What happened down in New Orleans New Year's Eve. The Saints are a huge part of that city. So, they're going to be behind the Saints. The Saints are going to be behind that. But like you said, Nick, they just have been playing bad football.
Yeah.
They are packed up for Cabo. It is Tampa Bay. I think they cover. The one thing that every time I really want to buy into the Buccaneers, though, their mental grit just gets real wobbly.
Yeah.
You know, I just don't know. Again, I think they win this game. I think they win the NFC South. I think they're probably mentally tougher than any other team in that division. But it's just one of these things like, okay, instead of being real white hot like most of these playoff teams to get in and you know they got a shot in a wild card round, it's kind of like, all right, okay, who in the NFC doesn't want to get that fifth seed and go down to Tampa Bay?
Yeah, I mean, to that point, though, I was impressed by how they bounced back from the fact that they couldn't get over the hump against Dallas. That was a game that we all expected them to win.
They're
Then they
allowed to
come back
lose.
and
That's
blow
like
the doors
one,
off.
they've won 5 out of 6 or whatever it is since their bye. I'm afraid of this offense. It's, to me, the best like offense in the league that's not led by a MVP candidate. No offense to Baker. This has been almost a joke. I feel bad for Baker.
I should have brought the hat.
Right.
I thought you were talking about Bucky Irvin.
No, I feel bad that he didn't make the Pro Bowl. And people were like, "Oh, he's snubbed." But for a snub, you have to say he should have made it over, and he shouldn't have made it over Jared Goff, Jaden Daniels, or Darnold, just because there's too many negative plays. If you add up sacks, fumbles, he leads the league in interceptions. Like, he has more of those than any player in the entire NFL, other than Caleb Williams, who blows everyone out of the water because of the sack total. But he's playing really well, and it's such a mismatch against the Saints defense. Their offensive line versus this Saints rush defense. I mean, Bucky is going to go crazy versus this pass defense. He'll have all the time in the world. And the Saints have given up, I think, the 4th most, according to Next Gen Stats, to receivers of any team since 2018. Not in this season, but every season. So you get a player into their secondary, like no one's making any tackles out of their linebackers. I'm glad you mentioned those, Steve. You know what happened on Bourbon Street, and they're playing that Sugar Bowl tonight, and your heart just goes out to everyone affected by that and that city. And it did get me thinking, like, how many times this team has been in a position to try to play for their city, and there is something about that. You almost feels fortunate that this game isn't in New Orleans. I don't know, but you just you think about that, but you also think about just on the field. There's a reason that number is so crazy, 13 and a half, because these two teams are just at different points in their season.
Yeah, and it's a long road back to look at how the Saints offense was with Clint Kubiak at the start of the season to the way things have kind of fallen off in there. But still, something to play for.
Yeah, shout out to Tristan Wirfs, by the way. I'm just throwing out some Pro Bowl news along the way, especially guys that I think should be all-pro. And tackle's a tough one because there's so many good tackles. But I think in the end I would go Wirfs and Sewell as my 2 first-team all-pro tackles, which means you're leaving Lane Johnson off, and that's really difficult. But that's how good Tristan Wirfs, I believe, is.
Then that's also, the big star for the right tackles.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Think about it.
Yeah.
The right tackles who are going in.
They don't get paid as much as they on the left side, but hey,
They're making a
that's
case.
absolutely
couple
true.
of pros right there.
And the Bucks have the highest pressure rate in the league since their bye week, and that Spencer Rattler is giving up or facing the most pressure of any quarterback in the league this season if he qualified. So that should be ugly. Let's take a quick break. We're going to get back and finish out the NFC South and those early 10 a.m. West Coast, Best Coast games on Week 18. Back on NFL Daily. Yeah, I guess the headliners of the early games are the NFC South games, because the Bucks need to win, obviously, to win the division. But it just would be so shocking if they didn't win that it makes this Falcons game feel a little less, poppy.
Yeah, and we could get an opportunity to get the spoilers.
Yeah.
Get Bryce and Adam Thielen of the Carolina Panthers to play spoilers in Atlanta, where the Falcons, Steve, are favored by 8 points with an over-under of 48 on CBS. Ian Eagle, Charles Davis, and Evan Washburn on the call. Can the Panthers bash the Hopes after the Hopes got bashed in overtime for Falcons fans?
First off, when have the Falcons been an 8-point favorite?
Is Vegas not watching Bryce Young and the Panthers? What's going on here?
Well, here's what they are watching. They are watching Bijan Robinson. And we're talking about Pro Bowls right here. I won't say he's a snub, but he's got to be one of those guys next in line. If it weren't such a great year for so many running backs, he would be recognized because what he does is amazing. I don't trust the Falcons to cover a division game, but they're They're all over the place. But, another player, again, for the Falcons, again, not a snub, but a friend, Caden Ellis, linebacker. I mean, how good of a player, of a value, guys, is he? He's absolutely amazing. I do think their defense and Caden Ellis, slows down Bryce Young. And these guys at defense is actually playing a little bit better. Not great, but a little bit better.
No, better. You're right.
So Atlanta covered. I just don't think it's going to be. I don't know if they do cover, I should say, but I don't think it's going to mean anything. I think the Bucs end up getting that.
I'm going to throw out a question to you guys. Okay. So, since Bryce Young re-entered the starting lineup, PFF has a stat: big time throws. Number 1 in the NFL since then is Joe Burrow. Number 2, Bryce Young. How about that?
That's great to hear.
And so my question for you is, who, if you had to start your team 2025, would you take out of these two quarterbacks, Michael Penix or Bryce Young? And you have to just base the decision on all the info that you have today. I think I would take Bryce Young just because I've seen more.
I mean, sample size alone. Yeah, he's got more games played. Penix has had 2 starts. But Penix probably has the higher ceiling, and I'm sure you want to elaborate on that. I've been so surprised, shocked, impressed by what Bryce Young, from when he got benched to where he is now. Like at one point I was like, did he have a body double in there for the first season plus 2 games? Because this is a completely different player. This is the guy that they thought they were drafting in the first round out of Alabama. He creates with his legs. He's comfortable. He makes throws under pressure. The anticipatory throws, got a lot of Drew Brees in him in that regard. And all that has come together to basically turn around the Panthers' outlook. They don't have to worry about quarterback anymore. I'm completely convinced this is their guy. Adam Thielen has helped a lot with that. He's had a really good year, really good back half of the year. But I'm super excited about the future for them. Sunday, however, I don't know.
But Penix, does he have, why is Penix a higher upside? He's a year older, so that's part of it for me too, is that Bryce Young is a year younger, and I just have more data of him playing at this level, whereas Penix, these last 2 weeks, I've been impressed. I just feel like I don't know. He's been a little up and down, too, with his accuracy. As a prospect, there was a lot of differing opinion on Penix.
Well, I think what we've seen, right, especially accuracy-wise, is he's making the right decision. But there's perhaps footwork issues. I know I'm no throwing guru, right? But some sort of issue that's causing, and I think he gets those balls down where it needs to be. A lot of them were sailing
on the deep throws.
Yeah, but the difference where they're separated right now is the way Bryce Young is managing the pocket. Where Carolina's made those improvements, especially in the interior. I think the offensive line has played better down the stretch, but we still see Bryce having to manage the pocket, make those plays, especially in the run game, where Michael Penix Jr. just doesn't have that in his game right now. It doesn't mean he's not going to be able to develop it, but it seems like the rush gets to him quicker, and probably that's right-handed bias. I don't know the way that I'm looking at it, but it's just Bryce, when pressure's coming with guys in his face, I feel
there's a difference in processing, and I think that just comes from experience more than anything.
This is a sneaky test, I think, for Raheem Morris in the Falcons.
What is?
Just taking care of this game. This is a big game. I think I think it's a dangerous game because Carolina, it's a division game. They're just good enough to win this game on offense. And Falcons offense, they should take care of business, put up a lot of points. Bijan should have a big day, and they should just go out and win. I just feel like the offseason is going to feel different, and this will show me something. If they win this game convincingly, that'll show me something because it is a big game for them. If they stub their toe and they lose a couple straight here, disappointing to end the season, they just have a different vibe. That's all.
What I tell you about the helmet, Greg, you can't fly with a bird with a wing down. You're going to go no place but circles are down. You got to have them both up like the Eagles. But no, here's my thing for Penix. And this is talking to defensive coordinator.
My favorite Wyche bit.
who faced Bryce. It's an old inside beat writer thing for the Falcons. But with Bryce Young and talking to defensive coordinators, they love his decision-making. They love the accuracy. Everything we talked about, but they're like, and there's nothing wrong with it. You really have to have the perfect roster, and you have to design for nothing more than his height.
Yeah.
You have to build it like how the Saints did with Drew Brees, guard to guard. Great guards and a great center. Right, with Penix, I think he opens up your offense a little bit. You've seen it already with the Falcons, right? You've got someone who can bounce it a little bit, who can bootleg a little bit. That's what's opening up a lot of stuff for Bijan. I just think you can probably build a little bit more. There's nothing wrong either way. I would just take Penix for some things you could do with your offense and his versatility.
You got to have the right system around him. It's like with me. You got to have chairs that go up and down for my co-host.
Yeah.
Like
We got a difference
go
here
down
by
around me.
about 4
Make
inches.
me fit in.
Yeah, let me pop down a little bit. There's has been improvement for the Carolina Panthers in terms of rush EPA. Their defense not the worst in the next gen stats era.
Nice.
This season. That's the 2024 Dallas Cowboys.
Wow.
Who are actually the worst in terms of rush EPA on defense. And they are our next team playing host to the Washington Commanders, Greg, who are favored by 4.5 points after punching their ticket for the postseason. Game on Fox, Adam Amin, Mark Sanchez, and Christina Pink there. The Cowboys won't have their chance to spoil their division rival. Do you think that Cooper Rush has one more in him?
No. This one seems too low. These two games, talking about them back to back, the lines are where they are because of motivational differences. The Falcons obviously have to win. And I think Washington, it's a little lower because maybe they're looking at – and yet I think they are playing to win. Dan Quinn has said it. They want to get that seed for whatever that's worth. And I think Dallas, even though they put up a great fight, they beat the Cowboys the first time around. If anything, that'll make the Commanders – more ready for this game, more alert. You mentioned the rushing yards. They actually put up over 400 yards on the Cowboys last time. So even though they lost that game, it's not like they weren't moving the ball. And I would be much more surprised if this game was close at the end than that Falcons-Panthers game. I think Washington-Dallas, if we were back doing the Survivor, I think they win by a couple touchdowns, and it's not close.
I think that with Cooper Rush and with the Cowboys, it's largely been bad. But every once in a while, it's kind of good. Like that Buccaneers game, kind of good. Wasn't the only one this year. So it's tough for me to say unequivocally that he's going to be terrible and that they're going to lose this game. But if you're just looking at it on paper, no matter the motivation, Washington is the better team. They have the better quarterback. They have the more explosive offense. And what I saw from the Cowboys against the Eagles recently really made me think, oh boy, you want to talk about tickets to Cabo? This is a team that might be going to Cabo.
There was not a whole lot of let's win this one for Mike McCarthy in that effort.
No.
And that's what I'm interested to see. This game's in Dallas. How many Commanders fans are in the stands? Right? We've seen other opposing teams that not named the Packers take over that stadium this year. So I want to see what the environment is. I do like Washington in this game. I think Dallas is going to be a little bit tougher initially out of the gate than what we're thinking against Washington. But I'm with you, Dan Quinn, knowing him, talking to some folks here, they're just trying to tighten up a couple things now. They're trying to get a little bit better, go into the playoffs with a young team on a roll. They like what they're doing, some things defensively. I don't think they play Marshawn Lattimore here.
Do you think they could rest people if they have a big lead or something? The way he made it sounded,
I think
they're playing to win.
I think they're playing to win. I don't think they want to rest people. I mean, you still want to get Jaden Daniels reps, right? Austin Eckler might be coming back, right? So you may want to do some things with functionality of the offense that way as well. And based on the way Dallas is playing, you get a little practice in, so to speak. So I like Washington in this game. 4.5 seems about right. I don't think it's going to be a wipeout. I think Dallas is going to compete a little bit. They got a few proud guys on that team.
No CeeDee Lamb, though. He is out for the season. No Ezekiel Elliott, who was released to give him a chance to sign on with a playoff team, which...
It's good to want things, Greg.
Yeah, I don't know if that's ever... Look, everybody wants a pony on Christmas. They don't always get ponies.
There is an opportunity. Cliff Kingsbury was at the mic acknowledging his desire to be a head coach again. We mentioned this historically bad Cowboys run defense. The Commanders had negative 32 yards over expected in Week 12 running the ball with their running backs against this Dallas Cowboys defense. There's an opportunity for Cliff to have some improvement.
He's going to throw it 50 times.
Well, we'll see, because the rich folks making the decisions like points. So no matter how they do it,
Well said.
Washington would like to get those. Let's go to another game from another fan base that would like some points. Their quarterback needs 607 yards to throw for 4,000 yards and end a streak. That's Caleb Williams of the Chicago Bears at the Green Bay Packers, who are favored by 10. Greg, Kevin Kugler, Moose Johnson, and Laura Oakman on the call. The Packers only lose to very good teams. How do you feel about their matchup against the Bears?
They want to go into the to the postseason with a better taste in their mouth in terms of winning. But the motivation for this game is a little odd. Like, they're playing for that 6-7 seed, but the Commanders have the pole position for it. So is it something they could be scoreboard watching, or they have Jordan Love out there for a quarter and a half and they feel good about it? I feel like that's in the cards in this game, and yet I feel like they're just better than the Bears enough that they could play backups and win the game. We've seen Malik Willis. We've seen Emmanuel Wilson. We've seen a lot of their players who don't play a lot, like maybe get Luke Musgrave some extra snaps. So this is a merciful end. Our producer, Hytham, because of scheduling, isn't back there today. But I was going to I wanted to congratulate him that just like this is over. This just feels like no fan base, I feel like, is ready for the season to end.
Your future starts tomorrow.
Than the Bears, exactly.
No, it's been, if this was at like week 14, I'd be like, oh man, Caleb is in for one because the Packers defense is going to get after him. But if they are resting guys, they're still going to get after him because of how bad the Bears offense is. It takes a little bit of the juice out of the game overall, but what I would like to see from the Bears, if the Packers end up playing, some backups and everything else, a little bit of momentum, a little bit of rhythm, a little bit more than you've shown in the last month, because that offense has been really, really hard to watch. It's not been fun. The defense has been up and down. It's been better at times, but the Bears as a team are a viewing experience, not very fun. So kind of because the Packers, like you said, seeding wise, don't maybe necessarily have everything to play for, especially if they're scoreboard watching. We might get kind of one of those little bit of a lull of a game, but overall, it's still a Packers, win.
Yeah, they're going to be scoreboard watching because, they want that 6 seed to come to L.A. and not have to go to Philly as the 7 seed.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a real important distinction there. Yeah, the 10's going to cover. The Green Bay, the way they play, the physicality that they play with, I love. I mean, even though they haven't beaten the tough games, I love the way they're playing football. They're going to take care of the Bears. They've been in Cabo. Unfortunately, but I like how, Nick, you said they need to take a page out of Matt Eberflus's book and finish strong with some momentum.
Well, except manage the clock better. Let's not get started.
I want Caleb to manage the clock in the pocket better.
Yeah.
67 sacks this season. 51 of those sacks have been on plays that were longer than 4 seconds.
Yeah.
In the pocket.
Make a mistake. Who cares? Get rid of the ball.
Yeah. Whether it's a bad check down, a wrong shoulder, throw a pick, make plays, man.
No trust.
Don't be scared.
Yeah, there's just no trust.
So there is something confusing about the 4 seed and the Rams and everything. The Rams are not playing their starters. Yeah. So the whole idea of we want to be at the 7 to avoid the Rams.
No, to avoid Philly.
To avoid Philly, right? That makes sense because the Rams are probably going to fall from the 3 to the 4. So
can they fall? I thought they're locked in.
The Bucks, I believe, will pass them if the Bucks. Or I know the Bucks pass them if the Bucks win and the Rams lose, which what's favored to happen.
Okay.
So it's interesting that the we'll get to the Rams and everything, but that they don't really seem to care about who their opponent is. Or maybe they do, and they have some master plan I don't really understand. Shout out to Edgerrin Cooper, by the way. It crossed my mind. If he had been healthy all season, he might have been Defensive Rookie of the Year. That's how good he's been playing.
Yeah, very good. Something for us to note as there was fan voting, right, for the Pro Bowl. It's something for us to acknowledge.
Yeah.
33% of the Pro Bowl was the fan vote. If you're bemoaning a quote-unquote popularity contest, literally. That's what happened. As we get to our next game, it is the New York Giants at the Philadelphia Eagles. The over-under is 37.5 on CBS. Andrew Catalon, Tiki Barber, Jason McCourty, and A.J. Ross on the call, Nick, where we will not have Saquon Barkley playing in this game. Nick Sirianni making what I believe is a correct decision.
Yep.
Eagles favored by 3? I know Drew Lock just had the game of his life, but 3 points, Nick?
That's why. That's right there. Because, we saw one game in which Drew Lock just lit it up against the Colts team that was actually fighting for their lives at the time and couldn't hold up. And we also know that the Eagles are not going to be playing Saquon. We've seen what they've done with Kenny Pickett and Tanner McKee. They put up a lot of points, but on face value alone, not the strongest, most lopsided matchup in one direction or the other, even if you're looking at these two teams. But yes, those 4 points. I don't know. I mean,
I'm taking the Giants.
Has anybody watched the Giants this year?
I'm taking the
for
Giants.
Last week?
This lock revival, lock to neighbors like Montana to Rice late in this season.
Tyrone Tracy's Roger Craig.
It may have to do with the fact I'm trying to catch up with Cynthia on our other show. But I actually do think the Giants have a good. I mean, it's an interesting thing to wonder. Like, is there enough parity that most teams' starters would beat the other team's backups? Because the Eagles are going to be resting everyone that they can. Lane Johnson, Saquon Barkley. We'll see about Jalen Hurts. That one is a little confusing, whether they want to get him back into the mix a little bit.
There's no reason you would risk that.
Just to get some reps. And then Saquon did speak about it over during the week. Let's listen to Saquon.
I mean, he asked me if I wanted to play, if I want to go for it. I said on Sunday, I probably didn't care too much for it. When I slept on it, it was an opportunity to implant my name in football history. I may never get another opportunity like that again. So I'm down, but at the end of the day, I don't care for putting the team at risk.
And he went on there and said he was down. I liked how honest he was. That initially he didn't care, then he slept on it. He wanted it, and so he was a little down. And some of the offensive linemen were down, but he went on to say how he totally understood it as well, and he'll be there to support his teammates. And the right decision, I think,
because he hadn't tasted that playoff air very often.
Yeah,
right.
He wants to be ready. Look, this is interesting because we also have the big picture play. Brian Daboll. You talk to people around the NFL like Daboll is a really good head coach, but the way they finished, how are you going to be able to sell to a frustrated fan base who's tired of this stuff that he needs to come back? Him and Joe Shane coming back next year, I could see Daboll, but Joe Shane coming back next year, especially getting rid of Saquon, I don't see that happening. But then, it's usually a package deal.
Yep, there it is.
So, we've heard John Mara say, hey, he doesn't want to get rid of him. He wants both of them back. That was well before they started playing. They've been in Cabo, too. Those hotels in Cabo can be loaded with some NFL rosters right there. So if they come out and especially if they take a bad L to Philadelphia with their backups, I can't see how you can make an argument to keep Brian Daboll. Again, people will tell you, though, he is a very good coach.
This
doesn't matter. It hasn't
so
panned out.
stupid because on the flip side, I can totally see the scenario where Drew Lock has back-to-back good games and they win 2 in a row, and in John Mara's mind, for whatever reason, that just makes him want to keep Daboll
I can see that happening.
much more. And I kind of think that is what I think will happen. Because ultimately, I'll take one team's starters over the other team's backups if I have to choose. It's close, but
It's just the old Eric Mangini win the last 4 games of the year to save your job for no reason the next year.
My namesake too, Sam Wyche was the king of that.
Oh, I'll never forget. Doug Marrone went 1-1 as the Jaguars interim, but they were against good teams, and the week 18 was a win, and they kept them off of that it just was spicy.
Yeah.
If the roster size was 90, I could see it. But we just get to 55, 17
That's
practice
fair.
squads
That's
if
fair.
you include the international player pathway. It's just
It's true.
There's still going to be very good Eagles playing in this game
Yes.
because they have to be.
Especially on defense.
Yeah,
they're
they're too deep there.
they're backups, and you can only rest so many guys. You're right that it could be tough. But let's go. Let's go, Drew Lock. Let's shock the world. Let's take a quick break, and we will be back. We'll wrap up those early games, get to the late ones. Eventually, we're going to get to that Sunday night football game. Back on NFL Daily. Should have mentioned Tanner McKee is the likely starter because Kenny Pickett is hurt for the Eagles. And that reminds me of different quarterback situations, different injuries. By the way, the Browns have announced, we already did this game, but I want to announce, but as we're taping, they announced Denzel Ward, David Njoku, Jordan Hicks, Pierre Strong, Jerome Ford, all out for Saturday.
Who's running the ball for him now that Ford's out?
The tank is on, and it's different in Buffalo, but we did get clarity during the week about the quarterback situations. Here, Patrick, Josh Allen is going to start, but it's expected that he will just kind of keep his streak going and sit pretty quickly. Drake May will also start for the Patriots.
And there was some consternation coming out of New England about why even play Drake May in this game with the goal ultimately being what you can accomplish in April as we get to the matchup between the Bills and the Patriots. The Bills favored by just 2. Mitchell Trubisky potentially going the way after Josh Allen secures the streak. Steve, the over-under 38, Spiro Ditas, Adam Archuleta, and Aditi Kinkpawala. On the call, the Patriots came close to shocking the Bills a couple weeks ago. What happens here?
Well, they also got absolutely mopped at the game I was at by the Chargers the other day. They got a 40-burger hung on them. Look, the one thing I saw on the page is Drake May is legit. All right, he is the real deal. But some of these other guys, it was not a lack of effort that they got their heads kicked in by the Chargers. There's just no fuel left in the tank.
Yep.
And so, again, I think they're going to come out and give a valiant effort, but it's just they don't have it to sustain for 4 quarters. So can they pull the upset against the Bills' backups? Maybe. I don't think so. This 2-point seems fine to me. I like Buffalo in this game just because honestly, being up front and center with the Patriots, they're just not – they are unleaded with less than a quarter tank of fuel.
Yeah, and it's not even just fuel too. It's just a lack of organization. Like the entire offensive operation is not great. I know you start Cole Strange in his first start at center last week,
He did
right?
pretty good.
But everybody around him, they can't even get the snap count
Nope.
down. I mean, it was to the point where I sent Greg a text and I was just like, their whole operation's a mess. Like there's nothing good going here. That's why I'm shocked to just see the 2 points. But then again, Bills playing backups, resting. Oh, recently they took him to the brink. That factors in there as well. But yeah, I mean, the Patriots, that's another team that's going to Cabo, and that's another team that's going to Cabo and may not even have the people in charge, the old chaperone in charge of the trip.
I think they'll be back.
Yeah, if I had to guess, I think they'll be back as well. Maybe they change the offensive coordinator. That's just a guess. I think a win here would help, and I kind of think it'll happen. They've been every other week. It's very consistent. Actually, if you look at the last 8 weeks of the Patriots, they have 1 week where they get absolutely rolled, and then they've always bounced back and responded the next week. They almost beat the Rams, which I consider, almost beating a good team is a win for them. They played well that week. Same thing happened against the Colts where they dominated that game, found a way to lose, but that's a good game for them. Get rolled the next week, come back, competitively play against the Bills. And with the Bills, being out there, that they're resting everyone, that's a pretty big advantage. Gives Gerard Mayo a chance here. Shout out to Christian Gonzalez. Did not make the Pro Bowl. I think he's got a chance to be an All-Pro, though, first or second team. I really value the opinions of John Ledyard, Ollie Connolly, who do a great podcast. They thought he's right there with Surtain as the top 2 cornerbacks in the entire NFL right now and getting slept on a little bit. And
they ask him to do a lot.
And you just look at physically. To me, he's maybe the most physically impressive cornerback there is out there.
Who, Surtain?
No, Christian Gonzalez.
Oh, no. He
just
got
in terms of
up next to Surtain.
Just in terms of what you test on and athletically, I'm putting him right there. I'm putting him right there.
On the table.
Nope.
We have, and Josh Allen's not going to get to make a little final MVP case, but that's fine. He doesn't need to.
Speaking of MVP cases, there's 2 quarterbacks in the NFL who have a positive EPA on tight window throws. One of them is Lamar Jackson. The other, Drake May.
Wow.
I believe that.
Feather in your cap.
But I know we passed it, but we'll see what happens after Monday. But I actually think Lamar Jackson is the favorite for the MVP now.
I don't.
I think the way this thing's going to finish, that Lamar is going to have such an overwhelming statistical case that he wins it, even though people don't
Nope.
think so.
Voters like he's got 2. It's time
Fatigue.
to get Josh.
Yeah, fatigue.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
That happened to LeBron for years.
Yeah. Vibes-based award.
There it is.
Let's get parameters so it all makes sense. And I know it takes the quote-unquote fun out of the MVP discussion, but who's having fun when we have to cut down very good football players to lift another one up? I get tired of it. Anyway.
Well said.
Let's go to our next game in the AFC South. It is the Jacksonville Jaguars against the Indianapolis Colts, who are favored by 5. The over-under is 44. Jason Benetti, Brady Quinn, and Sarah Kustok on the call. Greg, we have seen Mac Jones and Brian Thomas Jr. surprise folks, especially down the stretch. What do they do against the Colts defense that was powerless to stop Drew Lock with like the gem of Sidorak, with like
Who knows?
the Infinity Gauntlet on his hand?
I hate picking this game, that this game counts equally for our picks for the season. 5 points is too much.
I
for sure.
agree.
Could be the last game for Doug Peterson. It's
Will be.
expected that
Will be.
it will be. Doubt it would be the last game for Shane Steichen, but
Yeah.
crazier things have happened. Could be the last game for Chris Ballard as the GM. It's Mac Jones' 7th start this season, by the way.
Wow.
Been a lot of Mac Jones. I don't have much more to say on this.
I mean, if you just talk about Mac Jones specifically, he had some nice throws. Parker Washington with a great touchdown catch, toe tap last week. And then there was a lot of misses. And that's basically the Mac Jones experience right now. It's a gross game. It's 2 AFC South teams that are eliminated. This is what this division produces from time to time, especially in Week 18. So I feel the same way. This shouldn't count the same in picks, and yet it does. If I had to lean, I lean Colts, because if the Jags are expected to fire their coach, what really are they playing for other than the fact that they have a budding star in Brian Thomas?
It could matter for Ballard. What do you think about Ballard? Do you think he's back, Steve?
No. They've got to shake up something. It's not, and I'll get to it in a second. First off, I like Jacksonville in this game to pull the upset, and here's why. There's like, because the Colts are not paying attention, but there's just such murmuring chaos. Anthony Richardson came out this week and said he couldn't play last week because he had to crawl. He had all these back issues, and then throws this sweetener on top of him explaining that it may be chronic.
Oh, no.
I've been dealing with this since 8th grade. Oh. Just maybe what in the combine medical evaluations are we missing right here?
Yes.
This is the case, or is he saying, why is he saying this? So with everything he has done to be in and out of the lineup,
he's just like honest to a fault.
he's honest to a
It's all
fault.
true.
He's honest
That's
to a
all.
fault, and it's all true. But it's like, oh my gosh, we got this now to deal with. They can't get into Cabo. They're already in Acapulco. All right, they're there. I like Jacksonville to finish out with a dub. Send Doug out, Trent Baalke out with a nice.
Man, you're kind of convincing me here.
I was stunned. I read that and was
I
like,
might flip my pick.
like, why did Anthony?
I also can kind of just see them like win one for Doug. It's almost the flip side of not having much to play for. I watched these Jaguars games. I don't think that I like that they kept Doug this whole time.
He's a good coach.
They've been playing hard. They're just not good.
Yeah, at Indy with the Colts being favored by 5 after what we saw from this defense, I think we can ask questions about Ballard and Steichen. This is the end of the road for Gus Bradley, for sure.
Yes, definitely.
On that side of the ball, and it's Schrodinger's Jags at this point. I don't really know what to expect, but going on the road feels different to play in this last game in Duval. So I've got confidence in whether it's Flacco or Anthony Richardson. Just one positive memory for this Colts team that did have a chance, but kind of wilted at the end.
Yeah, Flacco will throw for a good amount of yards. Hopefully he avoids turning the ball over.
Yeah.
Hopefully he can move around more than he has. He's showing his age.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't navigate the pocket well anymore.
Jumped on him.
An opportunity for one last job for Joe Flacco coming up in 2025.
Cashing checks.
As we get to the Houston Texans at the Tennessee Titans. The Titans favored by 1.5 in Nashville against the Houston Texans, who are going to the playoffs. The over-under is 37. Tom McCarthy, Jay Feely, Ross Tucker, and Amanda Balionis on the call. We've seen a whole lot from this Texans team. Some good, probably more of it bad, Shook. Why are they not favored against the Tennessee
Exactly.
Titans? Who are going to play 2 quarterbacks here?
Oh my god.
Yeah, and that's the problem. Like, there's a lot of teams that are like, oh, we're going to the playoffs. Like, we can rest our guys. The Texans don't have the privilege, not because of seeding, because of performance.
Correct.
I mean, that game they played against the Ravens was absolutely embarrassing. That is a bottoming out of a team that's going to the playoffs. There's a lot of teams that we talk about going to the playoffs that you don't want to face. Everybody wants to play the Houston Texans.
And they're saying it out loud.
Yeah, they're not afraid of them.
seed.
Their offensive line's been bad all year. They can't generate much in the run game unless it's an occasional Joe Mixon 125-yard game. C.J. Stroud, the wear and tear mentally of not trusting your offensive line and losing 2 of your top receivers, very visible to the point that he's missing checkdowns when he's not even under pressure. Very concerned about this team. Probably one of the worst playoff teams in their current state going into the playoffs I can remember since the Steelers. God, what was that, 2020, 2021? And it's really a bummer because this defense has played so well, but they've also taken injuries on that side of the ball. As it pertains to this game, I can see why they're not favored. I'm really worried about what we're talking about next week.
They're going to smoke the Titans.
Yeah.
I think they're going to smash.
Well, no, they're not favored because DeMeco Ryans has made it sound like he's gonna play his starters for a little bit and then take them out.
No,
that's why they're not favored. That's the explanation.
Well, correct. He's going to play him. DeMeco's going to play them. Maybe he pulls him after halftime. I don't think so. I think he understands exactly what you're talking about. They have not played good football. C.J. Stroud is, like, you nailed it. He is not trusting anything with this operation of this offense. He has got to get it going. When the Ravens decided to double team Nico Collins or jump in with leverage points, he had no go-to. He's got to trust his other guys right here, regardless of who they are. The fact that they've had an extended time for him to have some practice reps with these guys should help. I think they come out. I think they just put it on the Titans. Get Azeez Al-Shaair back on defense. He's going to help with their run defense. I think they get back on track. What does that mean for the following week? I don't know, but they'll start to look a little bit better than the good Titans teams we've seen.
Yeah, I'm picking the Titans. I think if the Texans were playing all out to win, it's close to a coin flip. I just think that's the level the Texans are at now, and I don't think they'll play to win. That's what that number.
Come on, though, man.
That's what the number is about. Is that when a coach says they all gotta? I told them all to be ready. They got to be ready. They're gonna go out there. It's like I don't think he's gonna leave them out there because if they're playing all out to win, it's not. They're just not capable of stomping on a team, so it's going to be close. And I just think then you insert Davis Mills into the mix, and
that's going to happen at some point.
That's how they build those casinos, getting everyone to bite on the Texans, and they know
Davis Mills money, and that part that's the Titans just
Well, that's the thing.
They're
You have a
not
lot
gonna
of
lose.
faith in Mason Rudolph here.
Or Will Levis. We're going to see both of them
Why
in this
not?
game. And so-
Are we?
Yeah,
Is that what they said?
That's what I've seen out of Nashville
Oh, man.
this week. It's it's the Will Levis evaluation has gone and then stopped and then it's coming back. There was injuries and then they weren't, but
The one reason I would go Texans on this is because the Titans really lean into this old Oilers uniform stuff where they always wear the home Oilers uniform and sends out the logo on social now whenever they play the Texans. And that's such bad juju. I just feel like they deserve to lose. They did lose this game last year in overtime when they did that, when they wore the Oilers uniforms. And they're like sending it out. They're like sticking in their face that their cheap
These
owner.
players have no idea who the Houston Oilers are.
Well, I know it doesn't affect the players, but it's just
Fans do.
it's like
I do.
it's like cosmically your cheap at the time owner didn't want to pay for a great fan base in Houston and bolted, and now you're sticking it in their nose a little bit. I don't like it. I don't like
Adams
it.
catching a stray.
Yes.
I don't know how strayish that was. That thing was lined up.
Yeah.
It's time for Hot Matchups,
Let's
get
presented
it.
by Wingstop, the most impactful game in the AFC this week. It is the backups of the Kansas City Chiefs, Steve, playing against the Denver Broncos at home, favored by 10.5. They win. They are in the playoffs. Jim Nantz, Tony Romo, and Tracy Wolfson on the call. Can the Kansas City Chiefs backups step in here and bounce the Broncos from the playoffs?
Yes.
Oh,
Nice.
This is an egregious point spread.
Yes, I agree with that.
You guys are underselling Carson Wentz. Plus,
Yeah, I don't know about that.
here's something I have to say. What do we even talk about the Chiefs when they weren't playing well all season long? Their offensive line, right?
Yeah.
Who can they sit?
Tooney, supposedly they're going to,
Ooh,
by the way.
that dude, he's a
'Cause
stud.
I think
So,
he's been battling a little bit of some nagging injuries. I think
Maybe.
they've said Tooney is among the guys. Chris Jones is one. But you're right, they can't sit him.
But I could see Tooney sitting, and they put in the rookie from Brigham Young who started there. But they can't sit a ton of guys. They just don't have the depth. They've taken too many hits. But to me, though, this is more about Denver. Do they have the playoff medal? I have loved everything I've seen pretty much out of Bo Nix this year. I think he's got it. Does everybody else in a game like this, can they stand up, Chiefs backups or not? I am not going to be stunned if Kansas City, number 1 seed in hand, beats Denver in Denver, and
love
the
it.
door remains open for the Cincinnati Bengals. It makes me more trying to get the Bengals into the playoffs, emotionally.
Yeah.
But this seems like one where Denver, and then they just come out, just do not play a great game.
Yeah, and I don't like to carry over one result to the next because I think that the Broncos suffered a heartbreaking loss that they probably could have just taken to a tie last week. I don't really think it matters that much. What matters more in this game is coaching, and it speaks to what you just said about the Chiefs. Andy Reid being the greatest currently active head coach in the NFL, who has done a masterful job with a team that is weak in the offensive line, that missed their running back for a good portion of the season, that lost 2 receivers and just got Hollywood Brown back recently, and now they're kind of ascending. Some of these guys might not play, but the guy who pushes all the buttons is still there. It's a lot of faith in Carson Wentz, though. And that's where I get a little worried because the Broncos are playing for their lives. They've had this great season under Sean Payton. This is why we hired Sean Payton. Bo Nix, take all that hate that we got when we drafted him. We're going to shove it right where you know because we are going to make the playoffs right now. We're going to make the playoffs by beating a team and adding some fuel to the fire of this rivalry. And boy, would it be really, really embarrassing and disappointing if he lost this
Boy,
game.
Nick, you never saw what Andy Reid did with Doug Peterson back in the day in those final games of the season.
They have rested guys and won games in the past.
I've seen a few.
So it's not unprecedented. The Broncos overall, I don't think are playing their best football of the year. Nix was up and down. He had some major ups last week, but I think he's been a little up and down as the season ends. This was a close game, though, that the Broncos probably deserve to win the first time around. And so that informs me that these two teams know each other well. And I know the Chiefs have owned this matchup, but the matchup this year was close with the starters in and with so much to play for. It's hard for me to go against the Broncos here. Like defensively, you just feel like
Bonito,
they would have a
those
lot
guys.
of answers. And when they say the players that are sitting for the Chiefs, it's only, you're right, you can only sit so many, but then you see the names, and the names are Chris Jones, Trent McDuffie, Tooney, Patrick freaking Mahomes. Both running backs apparently are gonna sit. these are all their best players. So it does. If you can't win Denver, you certainly don't deserve to be making the playoffs.
It's Samaje Perine in a revenge game.
There it is. There it
Get a lot of carries. The Broncos advance blitzing on 38% of dropbacks. It's the third highest rate.
They probably blitz more on the run.
I would blitz him at 50% on Sunday. Why not?
But an opportunity for Carson Wentz to go out there and perform. Revive. We've seen Baker
a lot of those.
and Sam have revivals.
go.
Gino had a revival a few years ago.
No.
Okay.
Different.
I can't wait. I can't wait to hear this Jimmy G argument later. When we
No,
talk
Yeah,
about
let's
after
not
game
do
time.
that. Let's not do that.
Well, let's put a pin in that. Little shout out to Quinn Miners. I don't think there's a ton of Pro Bowl snubs, but people that I trust, Brian Baldinger being high amongst them, believes Quinn Miners has an argument to be the best guard in football, full stop. Like first team All-Pro, like he is the guy now. And sometimes with offensive lines, it takes a year for the voters to catch up. Like I think he has a decent chance to make All-Pro, but not Pro Bowl, which happens to some guys. So
Great point.
Just shout out to Quinn Miners.
Good shout out.
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking forward to that game, of course, because there's going to be a few teams watching it, paying attention, including the Miami Dolphins, who would like a Chiefs win. They are favored by 1 point, Greg, against Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets with an over-under of 39. Joe Davis, G-Reg, and Pam Oliver on the call. We saw Aaron Rodgers throwing bounce passes last week. How do you feel about the Fins by 1?
I just assumed I would come up with a way for this Jets team to lose this game because they're the Jets, and that's just it's happening. And yet, Teron Armstead left last week, has not been seen at practice all week. They put Kendall Lamb on injured reserve, who actually had a great game a week ago, mostly blocking Myles Garrett. So you're down your 2 starting tackles if Armstead isn't playing, and Tua sounds like he's a long shot as we tape
he's
this.
not playing.
Okay.
Snoop Huntley.
So that's tough.
Oh,
Like, yeah, you could beat the Jets, but it's not gonna be. I'm not just chalking that up as a win. 1 point, that feels about right. That this is it's crazy how important this game is because the Dolphins could be playing on Wild Card Weekend. Everyone has just mentally counted them out, and yet it's a realistic opportunity.
Yeah.
They're more realistic to me than the Bengals because they're ahead of them in line.
Yeah, and that's what matters more than anything in that tie-breaking scenario. But I am actually stunned that I even have to consider the fact that the Dolphins might not win. And I think a lot of it is because of Snoop Huntley and the way that he has gotten a couple months of time with this offense and has a much better understanding of it. He got the ball out incredibly quick last week against the Browns. He's fully capable of leading them to victory. And I also have no faith in the Jets. Like, we are, again, another team going to Cabo or beyond. Who knows? Because they're headed toward an offseason change. I've written the same story about Aaron Rodgers talking about, if they want me back, I'll come back, but I don't know. For the last month. Like, the vibes are bad. His body language is bad. I just cannot put any stock in this team. They all know that change is coming.
Yep.
And the Dolphins have everything to play for. So I don't care if it's Huntley or Tua. I just believe more in them and the way they've played recently.
Yeah, I think the Jets are going to Sarasota.
Oh.
By the way, instead of Cabo, I think they're staying domestic, a little bit older retirement communities here in Sarasota. I have no faith in the Jets.
None.
I mean, they just. I mean, the stuff about Garrett Wilson, Aaron Rodgers back. I may want out. Like what they want out as badly as anybody.
Meanwhile, they broke some ground this week. They are the first NFL team to ever interview an NFL Daily guest.
There it is.
A studio guest, Ron Rivera, interviewing for the head coaching job. So we're trying to build our own coaching tree here at NFL Daily.
It's a strong.
I was amazed. That was cool. Rex Ryan is apparently getting.
Well, you knew that was coming with Tannenbaum leading the search.
Yeah.
It's old GM.
Yeah, so you might not run it back.
You knew that was coming.
Yeah, let's not mention that so we can build up Coach Rivera a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it kind of undermines
This won't be Ron. I will say this. I don't think it's going to be Ron's last interview.
It shouldn't be.
No, I don't think it should.
I think he's going to have several.
Yeah.
The problem for the Dolphins, last week the leading rusher was Tyler Huntley.
Yeah.
Yes.
He got in the end zone. He had 52 yards on the ground. This is the number 32 rushing efficiency offense in the NFL. And Coach Mike Mack has struggled to get his team to be able to run the ball. The Jets' defense actually improving against the run in the past few weeks. The problem might be over on the offensive side of the football. Let's go to a team that isn't having problems on offense right now. All they needed was to get run up and done up by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Since then, the Chargers on fire. They are favored by 4.5 points. against the Las Vegas Raiders. And AOC at quarterback. It's on CBS. Kevin Harlan, Trent Green, Melanie Collins. The over-under 41.5. The Bolts have been rolling, Shook. Do they keep rolling against Las Vegas?
Yeah, I do. And that's not even I'm not taking anything away from the way the Raiders have played in the last couple of weeks, because I think they've played much better football. I would like to see it save Antonio Pierce's job, but probably not. I still just can't go against these Chargers. And I think I've been the guy who was throwing cold water on them when we recapped their most recent games, because I was like, well, you're playing the Patriots. But what we saw from them in their last few performances is finally giving Justin Herbert a little bit of time to throw the football down the field. Now, granted, he throws a lot of those to Ladd McConkey, but Stone Smart's starting to get involved a little bit more. His offense itself is just becoming more well-rounded with the return of J.K. Dobbins. And against the Raiders, I don't know. It's just on paper, strength versus weakness or whatever it might be. I feel very comfortable with the Chargers in this game.
Chargers gonna. I wouldn't be surprised if Harbaugh plays these guys all the way through.
Yeah,
He says he is.
They want to get another team. Openly says we want to get that number 5 seed.
Yeah, there's a seeding thing in play here.
And getting J.K. Dobbins back, you saw some of the positivity again against the Patriots. They want to continue to get him going. They know how important he's going to be if they advance in the postseason. So I think this good offensive line is going to keep working. More Ladd.
More Ladd. Much
More Ladd.
More Ladd.
I mean,
Love seeing that Ladd.
Missed practice on Wednesday. I do wonder if they'd ever consider being a little safer with him, who's had a lot of nagging injuries
he's
in
a
a game
small
that,
guy, and he gets tagged.
And they play on Sunday afternoon, and they're watching that Saturday Bengals game with a lot of interest, rooting for the Bengals so that they could possibly move up and pass the Steelers. Now, if the Steelers win that, they'll know that. Does that affect their plan? Hard to say. Harbaugh says that they're playing all out, and they're playing so well offensively that I tend to think they could do what the Texans would like to do, but I don't have faith in, which is just play so well early that you can rest some guys, and I think they could absolutely do that.
So big opportunity for the Chargers in Las Vegas, and I'm just glad that we get to see Aiden O'Connell, this new version of Aiden O'Connell, Greg, that likes to scramble, get back there and make plays.
Oh yeah,
He even broke double digits once.
The subject of my, least hot take ever, which is that Aiden O'Connell is a perfectly capable NFL backup and is going to have a solid 9 to 10 year career, which is a great result for a 4th round pick. So let's stop picking on old Aiden O'Connell. It's not his fault he's on this team and has had to play a lot. I do wonder if Antonio Pierce wins 3 straight games to end the season. Under the old regime, I would think that would keep him the job. Now that we think Tom Brady is this shadow owner, that might not save him.
It just depends on who they can get. You're hearing a lot of conversation about Mike Vrabel going there, and that's okay.
That would make a lot of sense in terms of friendship and experience and all that. All right, let's take one final break. We're going to go through a couple NFC West games and then get to the best game of the weekend, maybe of the entire regular season, Vikings-Lions. Back on NFL Daily. Yeah, Anthony Richardson crawling around on the ground.
Yeah.
Back injury. But he's not the only one trying to play hurt. Nick's got a little sniffles.
No, it's not sniffles. It's just leaking. You got a big nose. You see it from the side perspective.
Sniffles.
You got a long runway.
Maybe a little Rose Bowl flu.
Rose Bowl, hey.
I wouldn't blame you.
Hey.
COVID.
I tell you what, I earned
COVID
it.
streets of
I
Pasadena.
gotta say, I thought that was risky. It's fun. I know you love coming out to LA. You used to live out here.
Yeah.
I thought it was risky, and then they put it on. They put it on him for you. You didn't even have to sweat.
I made a promise. I saw them lose in Columbus one time to Oregon, and I was like, if they get back there to the Rose Bowl and play them, I'm going no matter what.
There it is.
Go.
It's commitment.
Yes. Loyalty.
Ryan Day's the best coach in the NCAA right now. Huh?
There you go.
That's coming straight from Columbus, Ohio.
Pending results in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, let's hold off on that.
The Seattle Seahawks, 6.5-point favorites across the street at SoFi Stadium, Steve, against the Rams. The over-under 38.5. Kenny Albert, Jonathan Vilba, Megan O'Leary on the call, where we've seen a variance of outcomes from the Rams. The Seahawks would like to have been in a better position here. Can they just come out and finish the season strong?
Well, Patrick, I want to toss this back to you since you were talking about backups reviving their career, and Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be throwing to Xavier Smith, guys like that for the Rams.
Jordan Whittington. Shout out to Rams preseason game attendees.
Yeah,
like
big
myself.
early season.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's the theme. Rest is the theme.
Right.
Jimmy was dealing with a whole lot of stuff for the past few years, injury-wise, coming in and out of games. We heard it from Saquon explaining his decision, right, where post-playing the game, Saquon was like, no, I'm good. I just played a game at running back.
Right.
And then he went to sleep. He's like, maybe I could do it. He ultimately listens to post-game Saquon. I think rest Jimmy G is a factor here. And the Seattle Seahawks win this game, but 6.5 feels a bit rich for me, considering that we get a rested James Richard Garoppolo, who multiple times this season I forgot was on this team.
Same. When they showed
he was suspended to start.
Right. When they showed the Kyren Williams Man of the Year video, which was really cool. Steven Jackson came in for it, and Jimmy G's at the front with like a cool new haircut. I was like, wait, what's he doing there?
He is the best looking guy in the NFL.
Right.
Exactly.
Like,
you don't miss him.
I like your theory, and I'm gonna take your theory and I'm gonna raise you one. I think this is a tough matchup. But I think there's a higher percentage chance that Jimmy Garoppolo is starting games for this Rams team next year than the public would.
That's hotter than the take I thought you were going to make. That's searing.
Well,
just higher. Now, not saying it's likely. I'm just saying it's more likely, I think, than people would think, and that maybe he's part of their future as like a 1B or a whatever competition. Who knows if Stafford wasn't there.
It gives them options, and then contractually, if Stafford and them wanted to part ways, there's a way to do it pretty easily.
They can get out.
Yeah, they're not strapped to him by any means because of money. So that makes sense. There's also the idea, we just saw it this past year. Sam Darnold played one game for the Niners last year, goes to the Vikings, and now look at what he's done. If people like to copycat, then they would maybe do the same thing with Jimmy, except he might not even have to change teams. So now I was not on board 90 seconds ago, and I'm completely sold. No, I can be bought.
He is turning 34 next season, so in a little different place.
Jimmy ain't played too many full seasons either, like Sam Darnold. No. So we'll continue this conversation at a different.
In a one-game scenario, though, Jimmy G rested
over
up.
Gino?
You know, he got that special off-season workout, which is why he was not playing the first.
Patrick, we got to put this one on Greg though. We got
a lot of back. Some teams play their backups, and there's not like a crazy dropout. I feel like the Rams are a very star-heavy, top-heavy team, where if they're resting their best players on both sides of the ball, then the backups, it might not be pretty. And the Seahawks team is pretty good. I think I would have maybe taken the Seahawks to win this game if the Rams were playing. So, yeah, they lose on the 5th tiebreaker, but I don't think a 10-7 season if they win this game is some massive disappointment.
If they win this game, they've got 10 wins.
And their defense, there's some proof of concept to me for Mike McDonald. As a head coach, you want to show, what do you bring to the table? Because I don't think every head coach brings something to the table. And I think the way I've seen this defense come together and kind of turn into the defense that he wants it to be, I see the proof of concept. So he's shown me something. That's all.
And with another offseason to get more of his guys in.
Yeah, and that'll be the key.
In the second year. I mean, they were having to do it at the trade deadline. They go salvage Ernest Jones.
Who's been great.
Rescue him.
Pay him. They're going to have to pay the man, though.
Fine, pay him. He's been great.
Yeah, a solid addition. And will stay in that division because the San Francisco 49ers are at the Arizona Cardinals, who are favored by 4. The over-under 42.5. Chris Myers, Mark Schlereth, Jen Hale. The Seahawks could have got some help from Trey McBride's face mask a week ago, Greg. Now Kyler and company at home trying to finish the season strong against a 49ers team that would also like to finish the season strong, but they're both San Lucas bound.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame because that Rams game would have been a perfect Week 18 game. I feel like to figure out who's the 13th, 14th team. Instead, that's dead. This one's dead. Kyle's bad years, it's weird. He's made the conference title game 4 times. In the other 4 seasons, the 49ers are 22-42. Mm-hmm. So when they've gone bad, they haven't gone 8-9 or 9-8. They haven't won more than 6 games, and I don't think they'll win this one because I think that you're probably playing Josh Dobbs here over Brock Purdy and Kyler. I think they would love to finish out. I think an 8th win actually would mean something to them, and it should. They have improved since last season.
I do like the Cardinals in this one for that reason as well. And it's also, it would feel good for the Arizona Cardinals to go into the offseason with a solid performance against a Niners defense that's just not as good as it's been in past years. Now, they got Hufanga back relatively recently, and he's been a good
one-handed.
Yeah, and he still made a difference. But The one thing I've wanted from the Cardinals is just consistency. I don't want you to be in 3rd and long and you got to make Kyler go make a hero play. And they've struggled to find that in a lot of these games. They feel very much like their record, but it would feel a lot better going into next season at 8-9 than 7-10, even if it's only 1 game difference, because of the bright moments from the season and what you can build on after year 2 with Jonathan Gannon.
And plus the fan base, and I think people who follow the Cardinals are tired of them tapering off on the back half of the season. So if they were able to finish this game against a 49ers team, again, they're going to be game. They're just beat up, right? They just don't boast on these guys. I don't think they're playing. So, we'll see. But Kyler, I think, frankly, for Kyler's sake, he needs to have a good game.
He has looked so upset in the last few games. Like, just dejected. Like, just, what do I
He wants it, and he can't quite figure out how to get it done. And he keeps saying to reporters and to the broadcasters, like, next year I'm going to run more. Now I want to start running more. And it got me thinking, like, what is the issue with Kyler? And I just don't think he has as good of a feel for what he should do to make himself the best as some of the great quarterbacks. Like a game manager, essentially. I always believed Jay Cutler could have had a great career. I think he was bad at this. I don't think he knew what he needed to do in certain situations to bring out the best in himself and his team. I think there might be like a little bit of Kyler with that, where he's always trying to self-correct what mistake he made in the past. Like, he's obviously a good player, but he's always like, I'm pushing hard in that direction. Now I'm going to try to do this. Now I'm going to do that. And maybe he doesn't have like this natural feel that the greats somehow have of like when to push. It's hard to put words to it, but does that make sense to you?
Well, I mean, what are we saying about Jaden Daniels? He's decisive. Right? He knows when to run. And we're especially seeing it down the stretch here. He's taking the ball and going with it.
Jaden's a great example of someone who I feel like has a great feel of what to do at different points.
Well, again, and he's not going to wait for the free rusher and Cliff Kingsbury's scheme to get to him. Right. He's going to go ahead and make that move before he gets there. Whereas Kyler, I think he's like, okay, I'm going to show I'm a short guy who can play from the pocket. Well, that's not working, so let me run. He's been through a couple different things. He's had such a mashup of a roster. Like, they still have not had an offensive identity with him there. In the first couple years at Cliff, I think they did. But they just don't – they still haven't had it yet. Is that on him? Is that on just, the roster around him? Is that on the coaching staff? I think that's something that kind of leads to him being indecisive.
I'm looking forward to him next year and another year in this offense.
I think there's a lot of promise here.
Yeah, the consistent thing has been inconsistency.
Yes.
Throughout his tenure in Arizona, and so that would be my hope would to be to see like a cohesive unit coming back. We'll know more about the search bar on defensive side for Jonathan Gannon. They won't be the search bar anymore. We'll know these guys. Some of them playing really good football in their first year in the NFL, and the offense gets another opportunity to add some talent. And we can see and not be reaction and overcorrection to everything that goes wrong as a season.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that starts just at the ground level, taking what the defense gives you. I think he tries to go too much in one direction or the other, and that could be the first step forward to fitting in within this scheme and how they accentuate his strengths going forward.
The entire season, the entire Week 18 NFL schedule leads to one thing.
Let's get it.
It is a game for the number 1 seed in the NFC between the Minnesota Vikings and Sam Darnold and Jared Goff and the Detroit Lions, who are at home, favored by 2.5. The over-under is 56.5. Mike Tirico, Chris Collinsworth, Melissa Stark on Sunday Night Football. This is why we do this, Shook.
This is actually the first matchup in NFL history between two teams with 14 wins. 28 combined wins, highest ever. Previous high, 25. So you want to talk about importance. It's not just for the division title or the NFC's top seed. It's also arguably, at least statistically, the most important regular season game in NFL history.
Well, I mean, look, I love this is so tough to call, but I like Detroit because it's at home. I think the atmosphere is going to be insane because we know what Detroit has been through organizationally. But knowing that the playoffs could come through the Motor City, I think means a lot. I like the way Dan Campbell went into that game against San Francisco saying, understand what we're about now. You talk about the standard being the standard. This is the standard.
Yep.
And, they had a tight game with the Vikings earlier in the season. Minnesota, the way it's playing now is frightening with Jordan Addison emerging the way he is, Hawkinson being a much more integral part of the offense. The 2.5 seems good because I think this is going to be a great game, and the way that the Vikings generate takeaways. We cannot underestimate that, whether it be the strip sack, fumbles forced off of the run pressures that they generate, and the interceptions, I think that's going to be the factor. If the Vikings generate a takeaway or two, they win. If the Lions are able to protect the ball, which they've done a good job of. And by the way, can we talk about how amazing Jahmyr Gibbs looks now that he's the bell cow?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Right.
I got a little nervous in that game, though. There was one run to the sideline where I was like, oh, go down healthy, please.
I think he's huge for them in this game. That I do think there is a way that their great players just have to be greater than the Vikings' great players. Like they need Gibbs to be special in a way that Aaron Jones is great, but is not as special as Jahmyr Gibbs.
Right.
And they need their offense, who is averaging, I just did some scratch math here, 37.5 points per game the last month. So I was like, how do you get an over-under of 56? We have one team that's averaging 38 points a game. So as their defense has collapsed, they've needed to keep scoring, and they've done it against decent defenses like the Packers and the Bills and the 49ers, Bears. Like it's not like they're sieves, and they just need that greatness to be better. I'm almost surprised they're favored because to me, they feel like the underdogs now.
Home field.
I guess so. They feel like the underdogs. Like the Vikings have clearly been better, I think, late in the season than the Lions, and yet there is something intangible here that I just believe in with the Lions that's like more than football. It's this journey that they've been on, and it's them overcoming a lot in different scenarios. And it's just like I feel like I'm on Dan Campbell's team, and I have to believe in them because of that. Although the Vikings have all of that too, except maybe better players overall.
It's
crazy.
Just, in terms of watching what the issue has been, and I know Sam Darnold has come through. That's why I picked them last week to beat the Green Bay Packers. But there were still late in the game watching Sam Darnold sail some throws. He threw the interception that ultimately led to the Packers having a chance. That was their first touchdown of the game. Where the problem for Jared Goff has really been the defense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Over on the other side. That's been it. Goff has been so lights out that despite how good Sam Darnold is playing, he's not playing Jared Goff football right
is
now.
anybody, though?
And that's
Joey Burrow. Joey Burrow's the
Joe Burrow, Lamar, Allen, yes, but that's the company he's keeping. When people have been saying Darnold should get MVP votes, I'm like, no, it should be Jared Goff.
Yeah, he's been in the top 5 of my QB index all year.
And so, like, you're missing high against the Green Bay Packers, and I know Xavier McKinney has been solid, and we'll talk about the Pro Bowl and the snubs. Kirby Joseph's leading the NFL in interceptions.
Dude's a stud.
Right now.
Crazy,
he got 2.
So good.
And I know Dan Campbell's like, we're going to try, we're going to play, we're playing all our starters. When Kirby Joseph got that pick and he's running it back, I'm like, slide. like of all the issues that they've had injury-wise on defense, he and Brian Branch have been special. And I don't think Darnold can afford to make just one mistake because all they need is one stop.
And here's a little inside story. When I was at Lions training camp this year, they're talking about, man, Jameson Williams has really matured. You're going to see this guy over the course of the season blossom. Who has really blown up for Jameson Williams? The reason why they say he's matured was Teddy Bridgewater's presence on their roster last year. Well, guess who's back on their roster now? The past few weeks, he's going to be there for as long as they're in postseason.
And who just had his best game of the season?
State champion.
Jameson Williams.
I mean, I'm telling you, they say something about the way that Teddy can connect to this young man who's gone through an awful lot in the early parts of his career. That's something to keep an eye on because he's really starting to feel a little bit better. So there's a little inside intel.
I like that. And you know what? I think it just bolsters their strength already. In this game specifically, and I think we saw a little bit of when they played San Francisco last week, they got the turnovers they needed, which you just talked about. But what if they don't?
What if they don't?
If they don't, we're looking at a shootout because they have to put up these points just to win these games because they know they can't lean on that defense.
Yeah, they just stick with that scheme. Like, you don't know what Brian Flores is going to do in this game, and that's a big-time advantage. In the first matchup, Jonathan Grenard got after Taylor Decker.
He got after him.
He actually dominated that matchup. Van Ginkel and Grenard both made the Pro Bowl team, which is pretty cool. Great job by Kwesi this offseason.
How about that?
That's amazing. They could have Alex Anzalone back on Detroit's side. Adam Schefter reported it was a realistic chance that he will be back. And I think that's really important because I think for all the problems they've had, on the defensive line, they've gotten a lot of those guys back where teams like the 49ers are picking on them. It's the middle of the field. Darnold's great there. The Vikings have so much talent there. They actually were very good the first matchup there. So Anzalone would give them a big upgrade from the types of guys that they've had out there.
And the communication, because the Lions, because of all their injuries, played just a ton of zone.
Oh, yeah.
Just a ton of zone. I mean, so teams just pick them apart. The communication Anzalone could give them would be huge.
you really just gonna keep blitzing him like crazy. Darnold's
I don't think so.
Darnold's so good at holding the ball forever. There was a stat from Next Gen that him and Herbert hold the ball the longest for guys who don't scramble. Like they hold the ball and they throw it, and they're extremely efficient, which is a tough way to live. It means you're inviting getting hit a lot, and those two guys have been hit quite a bit.
To his credit, though, when he's under pressure, when the rush comes
it's
in,
been great.
He's very sharp.
And he's allowing those very, very good receivers to get deeper down the field and be covered for longer.
Wait, so we're all leaning Lions? This doesn't feel. Haven't we learned anything?
No, I'm kind of leaning Vikings.
Okay.
I'm leaning Lions because of the home. I think home
I love
field
that.
advantage
Yeah.
is huge here.
I think that the emotional part that you described was last year's Lions, and I think it's more about we got to get home field advantage to ensure that we don't find ourselves in the situation we were in Santa Clara last year.
But they're undefeated on the road. That's the one thing I love about the Lions. If they have to go to Philly, they can play outdoors in Beverly.
Yeah.
Right.
They can mash if they
Whoever loses this game, the story, I can easily imagine in 3 weeks' time before the NFC Championship, the narratives going into that game, like they lost that Week 18 game, but they knew their season wasn't over, and they went on the road and won 2 games. And credit to both these teams. You can imagine either one of them doing it and getting back to either a rematch or the NFC Championship.
Very, very within the realm of possibilities for 14-2 teams.
Right.
Historic.
That's it, guys. We did it. 4 across.
Nick Shook in the house.
Nick.
Did it.
T-shirt
It was
and all.
great.
Well done.
Shout out to Ryan Day for making this possible.
There it is.
You know,
Thank you.
I'm happy that you were able to spend the holidays with your large family.
Yes.
A lot of siblings. And that you were able to go back to Cleveland. But we do miss you here.
Yeah, you know,
I remember when you were in the newsroom with us every day. It was fun.
Yep.
Yeah, but now, we moved here right when I moved to Cleveland. I don't even get to hang out in these nice digs, but it's always great to walk in and see familiar faces just like you guys.
Well, I'll see you soon on your little box.
Yep, I'll be back in the box. Everybody get used to my oversized head.
Let's get out of here. Appreciate you guys. We will be back on Friday. Cynthia and I making our weekly picks. We'll keep that going through the regular season. And then, yes, we got QB Island returning. We got the recap. Yeah,
Can't wait to see what you have in store for us, Greg.
when we got 16 regular season games left, football is finally back.